January has earned a reputation for being, at best, a place for studios with neither faith in nor notion of how to market certain films to dump them, and, at worst, a month-long trash fire of features doomed to fail, released one after the other until all you're left with come February 1st is regret for having been foolish enough to hope for better. That said, this January was surprising in its adequacy. To be honest, it was downright tolerable. There were some stinkers for sure, not naming any names like a boss, but Bad Boys for Life was genuinely good. Underwater doled out bloody chills and thrills that weighed in at a cut above the norm, and The Gentleman saw Guy Ritchie return to what he does best: have smart, alecky, eccentric Brits attempt to dispatch and one-up one another in violent and inventive ways. Well, you can add Gretel and Hansel, the latest reimagining of the well-known German fairy tale, to that list of January surprises, because for its noticeable faults, it's a dark and disquieting slice of cinema with mood to spare. This adaptation comes to us from Oz Perkins of The Black Coat's Daughter, a 2015 horror thriller that taxed my patience and overestimated my investment. And I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, a scary 2016 gothic horror film that seemingly prides itself on its refusal to be scary.
I'm sorry?
Neither film is bad, but while both proudly display an atmosphere of dread that is unyielding and undeniable, the deliberate avoidance of familiar tropes, conventions, and even payoffs sadly won't work for everyone, and by everyone I mean me. With that in mind, Gretel and Hansel delivers much of what one might come to expect from Perkins. Written by Rob Hayes, who served on a half-dozen episodes of the British cringe comedy series Chewing Gum, this version of the Brothers Grimm yarn places Gretel at the forefront and follows her and Hansel across the countryside and through the kind of forest Hogwarts students are regularly forced to serve detention in.
Got to have your wits about you.
Sophia Lillis of that pretty good adaptation of Stephen King's It and its much less good follow-up plays Gretel, who is charged with the safety of herself and her little brother after they are cast out of their home to fend for themselves. Sam Leakey in his theatrical debut plays Hansel, who fits the part well, performing the expected duties of being whiny, hungry, and belligerent all at once. Though they share the title, it is very much Gretel's story this time around. Starving and at the edge of exhaustion, they happen upon the infamous witch, who invites them into her home and fills their bellies with an endless feast of meats, cheese, and milk, despite a clear absence of livestock on her property or anywhere in the area. And here's where the film really begins to show its promise. Not only does Gretel and Hansel update the classic with a modern sensibility, this Gretel is given fairly progressive views, a willfulness, and a welcome independence lacking in all previous incarnations of the tale. She has also been gifted a kind of second sight, a supernatural ability that piques the witch's interest and inspires her to take the young woman under her wing, opening her eyes to the power that has always been within her, at her fingertips, waiting for her to seize, in effect turning this version into a kind of coming-of-age story. That witch, by the way, is played by none other than Alice Krige, whom you probably know best as the Borg Queen from Star Trek First Contact. This Hansel and Gretel has an interest in the inherent power women possess and in their place in the world, and it isn't subtle about that, nor should it be. This witch is less concerned with fattening Gretel up to eat her than she is with guiding her along the path to discovering her true power, and better arming her for the world that awaits beyond the safety of her door. That message gets confused somewhat as it comes from a character who has devoted a lifetime to doing unspeakable things, and things this movie isn't afraid to show you in grotesque detail either. She eats children. That's not a spoiler, that's the story, same as it ever was. It's never scary, not really, but it is unsettling, frequently offering up disturbing images you can't unsee, not unlike Tarsem Singh's trippy 2000 debut The Cell. Neither Gretel nor Hansel's characters are explored in any great detail, and the needless voiceover given to her only seems to bring that fact into stark relief. It's 87 minutes long but feels like it wishes it were longer despite already being stretched to its narrative limit. The film pontificates on the shape of the world but makes no plans for its betterment. It wants so desperately to say something, but I'm not sure even it knows what that is. The dialogue is also oddly imbalanced. Hansel and the other characters speak in a dialect that befits the time and place, while Gretel has a modern tone and inflection that is nothing short of distracting. At one point, the witch utters the phrase, "Another one bites the dust," then offers a reference to The Wizard of Oz, both of which knock you out of the film like a right hook.
Put your hands up, you lopsided bag of hay.
Now that's getting personal, Lion.
They're odd choices, ones you're always aware of. In its defense, what it lacks in narrative cohesion, Gretel and Hansel more than makes up for in visual splendor. The cinematography by Gallo Oliveras, who contributed on Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, is top tier. Shots drip with an atmosphere that bleeds to every corner of the frame, which has been restricted to an aspect ratio of 1.55 to 1, lending the entire story a focused, intimate, even sometimes claustrophobic feeling, as though you're as trapped within its confines as the titular children themselves. It's simply too pretty for a January release. What Perkins and Oliveris have created in Gretel and Hansel is a world that looks and feels inspired by 4 primary sources. In the witch's house, which unfolds in long corridors, impossibly high ceilings, and more rooms than it could ever hold judging by its exterior, it at times recalls the Pale Man's Buffet from Guillermo del Toro's own fairy tale Pan's Labyrinth, and at others brings back memories of Darkness's Fortress from Ridley Scott's Legend. Robert Eggers' The Witch clearly deserves credit for both its visuals and its themes, and the influence of Dario Argento's Suspiria cannot be discounted. Add a hypnotic Vangelis-like score by Robin Couder to the mix, and you have all the makings of a cult classic. Beyond the visual aesthetic and an atmosphere that beats like a heart at the film's core, I don't believe anyone will sing its praises just yet. For me, it's simply too soon to tell, but I'm looking forward to it being rediscovered several years down the line when we once again wonder whatever became of those 2 children lost in the woods. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and give us a like. Ring that bell so you never miss an update, and follow Tangent1985 on Twitter for more. I'm M. Glenn Gore, and I'll see you next time.